His whiskey left an aftertaste that no one could describe because no one lived long enough. In 1877, in the heart of Montana, there was a saloon where the whiskey wasn't just alcohol. It was a death sentence. The saloon keeper who served liquor laced with flesh created a drink that left an aftertaste so strange no one could describe it because no one lived long enough to talk about it. But what if these patrons weren't victims of a twisted saloon keeper? What if they made a choice that would seal their fate the moment they took a sip? What happens when free will leads you straight into darkness? Tom had heard the rumors. It was the kind of tale that gets whispered around campfires, something between legend and nightmare. A saloon in the middle of nowhere, deep in Montana's wild frontier, where the whiskey was unlike anything you'd ever taste. They said it was cursed. Some claimed it was brewed from the souls of the lost. Others swore it was the work of dark rituals. No one seemed to live long enough after they drank it to describe the taste. But Tom wasn't one to buy into ghost stories. He had traveled far to make a name for himself, to find something that would give his life purpose. And this saloon, this place that the locals spoke of with a mix of fear and fascination, seemed like the perfect test for his curiosity. The ride to the saloon had been long, the harsh wind of the plains biting at his face. When he finally saw the silhouette of the building against the setting sun, it looked more like a forgotten relic of a better time, its edges softened by years of neglect. The sign was crooked, almost as if it were barely hanging on. The saloon, it read, in faded paint that looked as though it had been there for decades. As Tom dismounted and stepped inside, the heavy door creaked, and he was immediately hit by the thick, smoky air. It wasn't like any other bar had been in. The smell wasn't the usual mixture of spilled liquor and sweat, but something deeper, something older. The wooden floorboards groaned under his boots as he moved further inside. The dim light from the oil lamps flickered on the walls, casting strange shadows across the room. And then he saw them, the patrons. They sat hunched at the bar or slouched at their tables, their eyes empty, their faces pale and gaunt. They didn't look sick exactly, but they didn't look alive either. They didn't speak, didn't laugh, didn't even seem to notice him as he walked past them. It was as if the life had been sucked out of them, and in that moment, Tom began to question whether the rumors were true. At the far end of the bar, behind a polished, dark wood counter, stood Ezra Calhoun, tall, lean, with sharp features that seemed almost too perfect. He had a face that looked like it belonged to a man who had seen things no one else had. His eyes, cold and calculating, locked onto Tom the moment he entered. Without a word, Ezra moved toward him, his presence filling the room as if the very air shifted when he came close. "You're looking for something," Ezra said, his voice low and smooth, like the whiskey that flowed from his bar. Tom froze. How did he know? He hadn't said a word, hadn't even made a sound as he walked in. But it was true. He was looking for something, a mystery to solve, a challenge to face, and this saloon seemed like the perfect place to test his nerve. "I'm here for a drink," Tom said, his voice steady, even though a slight chill crawled up his spine. Ezra's lips twitched into a smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. Without another word, he slid a glass across the bar, filled with amber liquid that shimmered in the dim light. Tom stared at it. The drink was beautiful, but it also seemed wrong somehow. There was something about it that felt like it was meant for someone else, but Tom wasn't about to back down now. He had come for answers, and a part of him already knew he wouldn't leave until he had them. He reached for the glass, the cold surface sending a jolt through his hand as he picked it up. The whiskey inside swirled in a way that didn't seem natural. It wasn't like any drink Head had before. There was an intensity to it, a weight, almost as if it were alive. Without thinking, Tom took a sip. The taste hit him like a freight train. It was like nothing Head ever had before, a harsh burn that spread down his throat, followed by a strange metallic aftertaste that seemed to linger long after the liquid was gone. It wasn't just the alcohol. There was something deeper, something more visceral. It felt like he was drinking in something that wasn't just part of him, but part of someone else. His vision blurred slightly, and his head swam with dizziness. He could feel a pulse in his chest, thudding against his ribs like a drumbeat. The room seemed to close in on him, the walls pressing in, suffocating him. He tried to shake off the feeling, but it only grew stronger. He looked around the saloon, desperate to find some way to make sense of it. The other patrons were still sitting in their places, silent and still. But now, Tom saw them differently. They weren't just lifeless. They were empty. They looked like shells, like the souls had been drained from their bodies, and now they were just waiting. Waiting for what? Tom couldn't tell. But before he could think too much more on it, Ezra's voice cut through his thoughts, smooth and cold. "Everyone who drinks here," Ezra said, his gaze locked onto Tom's, "gets what they're truly looking for, whether they realize it or not." Tom felt a chill spread down his spine, the words sinking into him like cold water. He looked back at Ezra, searching for some sign of emotion, something that would tell him this was just a game. But there was nothing. Ezra was calm, collected. It was as though this was just a normal night for him. "What do you mean?" Tom asked, his voice tight. "What's in the drink?" Ezra didn't answer immediately. He took a step closer, the silence hanging between them thick enough to cut. Then, he finally spoke. "The drink is more than just alcohol, my friend. It's a reflection of what you've come for. It takes a little piece of you and gives you something back in return, but not always what you expect." The words hit Tom like a punch to the gut. What had he just drank? He felt the weight of the room grow heavier, like the very air was pressing against him. He reached for his glass, wanting to take another sip, but a sudden wave of nausea washed over him. He looked at Ezra again, trying to make sense of the cryptic warning. Ezra's eyes never left him, and for a moment, Tom saw something flicker there, something darker, something far more sinister than he had anticipated. Ezra wasn't just a bartender, he was something else. A keeper of some twisted, ancient power. Then Ezra smiled again, that same cold, calculating smile. "You'll understand soon enough," he said, his voice soft but firm. "But remember this, no one who drinks from this bar ever leaves the same." Tom's head was spinning. He had just taken his first sip, but he had no idea yet that the real price of the drink wasn't the taste, it was the choice he had made, and the darkness that would soon begin to unfold. Tom tried to shake off the dizziness that crept over him, brushing it aside as nothing more than the effect of an unusually strong drink. He glanced down at his glass, its contents swirling like liquid gold. It wasn't just alcohol. No, there was something about it that gnawed at the back of his mind, pulling him in further. He couldn't stop himself from reaching for it again. The pull was undeniable. The glass felt heavier in his hand now, as if it were dragging him towards some unseen abyss. He took another sip, and the taste hit him harder this time. It wasn't just bitter. It was more than that, sharp, metallic, like he had just swallowed something alive. His mouth went dry as the aftertaste lingered, strange and haunting. Something primal stirred inside him, a need to drink more, to understand the overwhelming sensation that flooded his senses. His head felt like it was floating, disconnected from his body. The room around him seemed to blur, the faces of the other patrons melting into shadows. Everything began to warp, slow down, like the saloon was bending reality itself to its will. It wasn't just the alcohol. It was as if the very essence of the place was seeping into him. But there was no turning back now. The whiskey had already done its work, crawling under his skin, sinking into his soul. Tom gripped the edge of the bar, trying to steady himself, but his legs felt like jelly. His vision shifted again, and suddenly, he wasn't alone anymore. The patrons who had once seemed lifeless, their faces blank and their eyes dead, now stirred. Their gazes locked onto Tom, cold and hollow. He froze, every hair on his neck standing up. He thought they were simply lost in their own worlds, but now it was clear. They were watching him, waiting for him to slip further into the haze. His chest tightened as a surge of panic clawed at his insides. One man, sitting alone at the far end of the bar, slowly turned his head toward Tom. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, like he hadn't blinked in hours, maybe days. His lips parted, and Tom could barely hear the rasp of his voice as he spoke, his words slow, deliberate. You felt it, didn't you?" The man croaked. Tom didn't respond, his mind too foggy to comprehend the question. The man's lips twitched upward in a half smile, but it wasn't a smile of reassurance. It was a grin full of something darker. "You'll feel it more the more you drink," the man said, his voice fading into a low, eerie whisper. "The more you want to drink, the deeper you fall. And then you're just like us." Tom's blood ran cold. He turned away from the man, but it was too late. The others were staring now, their eyes locked onto him, and the weight of their gaze made it feel as though they were watching him unravel. Their faces were so blank, but there was something in their eyes, a hollow recognition, a knowing. He was already one of them. He had made the choice. That's when he heard Ezra's voice again, smooth and cold. "Isn't it strange?" Ezra said, sliding another glass of whiskey toward him. "You came here looking for something, but now you've found it. You've already taken the first step, and soon the drink will find you." Tom recoiled slightly, unsure of whether it was the alcohol making his skin prickle or Ezra's words burrowing under his skin. He wanted to say, Something but the words stuck in his throat. The saloon felt like a trap, its walls closing in. The air was thick, almost suffocating. Ezra didn't seem bothered by Tom's silence. He spoke again, this time with more conviction. Everyone who comes here thinks they're in control. They think they can leave whenever they want. But the truth is, Tom, you'll never leave. Not after that first drink. A cold sweat broke out on Tom's forehead. His heartbeat quickened, and for the first time since entering, he felt a sense of dread that he couldn't shake. What had he done? He had come here out of curiosity, to test the stories. Now he realized too late that he had stepped into something much darker than he could have ever imagined. But Ezra wasn't done. He leaned in, his eyes glinting with something sinister. "You think they're trapped in here, don't you?" "The others. The ones who drink, who stay." Ezra paused, a wicked smile curling on his lips. "The truth is, they've chosen to be here, just like you. Every drink is a choice, Tom. And the worst part, you want to stay. You just don't realize it yet." Tom's mind raced, his thoughts disjointed. Was Ezra right? Was he here by choice? His heart pounded in his chest, and his breathing became shallow as panic crept up his spine. He tried to stand, but his legs were like rubber. The room tilted dangerously, and he had to grab onto the bar for support. "I have to leave," he thought. "I have to leave before it's too late." But before he could move, Ezra's voice cut through the chaos in his mind. "It's already too late, Tom. You're already one of us." The words hit him harder than the drink ever could. His stomach turned, nausea rising like a tidal wave. He felt it now, the creeping realization that this wasn't just some bad night, some bad decision. This was his fate. This was what he had walked into, and he hadn't even seen it coming. The others at the bar began to stir, their heads turning slowly, their eyes locking onto him with a hunger that was too real, too unsettling. Tom's pulse thundered in his ears. He couldn't breathe. The walls of the saloon seemed to close in tighter with each passing second. The faces around him were frozen in a twisted version of smiles, and their eyes gleamed with an eerie, knowing satisfaction. And then he realized the truth. He wasn't just drinking whiskey. He was drinking something that held them all here. Something that didn't just take their lives, it consumed their souls, their wills, their very essence. And now, Tom was caught in its grip. Tom's hand shook as he reached for his glass again, this time feeling the weight of it more than ever before. He wasn't just trapped in the saloon. He was trapped by his own need for the drink. He was already a part of the saloon's dark, twisted cycle. Tom was beginning to understand, but he still had no idea what came next. The drink was only the beginning of a nightmare that had no end. The saloon had never felt more suffocating. The air, thick with smoke, and the overwhelming scent of whiskey pressed in on Tom like a heavy blanket. He tried to breathe, but the stench of his own panic filled his lungs, drowning out the familiar smells of Montana. The world around him had shifted in a way he couldn't understand, as if reality itself had been twisted into something else entirely. Each heartbeat seemed louder than the last, echoing in his chest like a warning bell. Ezra watched him intently from behind the bar, his face an unreadable mask. The saloon keeper's cold gaze followed Tom's every move, his lips barely twitching as Tom gripped the counter, fighting to steady himself. "You look like you've just realized something," Ezra finally said, his voice smooth but laced with an undeniable tension. "The drink does that to people, makes them understand. Too late." Tom's mind raced. The events of the last hour flashed before his eyes. The first sip, the dizziness, the strange aftertaste, the cold, hollow stares of the patrons around him. Was this all part of some twisted joke? Was Ezra playing with him, leading him down a path he could never return from? "What do you mean, too late?" Tom asked, his voice hoarse. He tried to ignore the fact that his own hand was trembling, but there was no stopping it now. The saloon had already sunk its claws into him, and he had no idea how to get free. Ezra's gaze softened ever so slightly, and he took a slow step toward Tom. "The truth is, Tom, the whiskey isn't just alcohol. It's a reflection of your soul. Your desires. Everyone who drinks here comes looking for something, whether they realize it or not. Some are searching for peace, some for power, and some, like you, are just looking for something to fill that empty space inside." Tom felt a chill seep into his bones as Ezra's words washed over him. He tried to block them out, but it was impossible. What was he searching for? What had brought him here in the first place? Had heard the stories, yes, but something deeper had driven him. His own curiosity, yes, but what else? The questions felt too heavy. He couldn't answer them. He didn't want to. "But why?" Tom asked, his voice breaking. "Why do they stay?" If this is so terrible, why do they keep drinking? Why do they keep coming back? Ezra's lips curved into a slow, knowing smile, and he leaned closer. That's the thing, Tom. No one is ever forced. They come here, drink the whiskey, and they choose to stay. They may not realize it, but deep down, they want to. It's not a trap. It's an invitation. Tom shook his head, his thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and fear. So you're saying they choose this? They choose to. He couldn't finish the thought. He couldn't believe it. How could someone choose to die like that? Ezra's gaze hardened. People don't drink because they have to. They drink because they're searching for something, and they're willing to pay any price for it. The drink doesn't kill them. It reveals who they really are. The weight of Ezra's words hit Tom like a ton of bricks. He realized with a sinking heart that this wasn't just a bar. This wasn't just a place to forget your troubles or drown your sorrows. This place was something else, something far darker, far more dangerous than he had ever anticipated. And what do you get out of all this? Tom managed to ask, his voice barely a whisper. Why do you serve them this poison? Ezra didn't hesitate. He stepped back behind the bar, his movements deliberate and controlled. I give them what they came for, he said simply, his voice oddly gentle. I offer the whiskey, and they choose what to do with it. It's not for me to decide what happens next. They make that choice for themselves. Tom's mind was reeling. He couldn't make sense of it. Ezra was playing some kind of twisted game, but there was a deeper truth buried beneath the saloon keeper's words. The patrons weren't just trapped by their desires, they were complicit in their own downfall. They chose to drink. They chose to stay. But what if they want to leave? Tom asked, his voice shaking with frustration. What if they realize they've made a mistake? What if they want to get out? Ezra's eyes gleamed with an almost sadistic amusement. That's the thing, Tom. They can leave. The door is always open. But you see, no one ever does. Not once they've tasted the whiskey. Because once you've had a taste, once you've felt that thirst, it never really goes away. It calls to you. It makes you want more. And the more you drink, the more you need it. Tom's throat went dry. His heart was hammering in his chest. It wasn't the alcohol making him dizzy anymore. It was the reality of what Ezra was saying. This wasn't a trap. This wasn't a curse. This was a choice that could drag you into a darkness you couldn't escape. And once you stepped over that line, there was no turning back. But that wasn't all Ezra had to say. Tom, Ezra continued, his tone growing softer, more persuasive, you've already made the first choice. You drank the whiskey. You crossed the line just like the others. Now you'll feel its pull. You'll feel the need for it every day, and one day you'll come back. You'll come back and drink again, and then you'll be part of it. Tom's chest tightened. The pull of the whiskey. It was already starting to grow, deeper than any alcohol buzz, deeper than any desire for more. It was something else, something darker, and he could feel it calling to him already. Ezra seemed to sense Tom's hesitation, and he leaned in close, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I'm offering you a choice, Tom. You can leave now, walk out that door, and never come back. But you'll always wonder, always feel that emptiness inside you, like a wound that can't be healed. Or you can stay, you can drink again, and you can become a part of something bigger than yourself, something that never ends. You'll never be lonely again. The words were like poison in Tom's ears, twisting everything inside him. He had come here seeking answers, seeking something that could give his life meaning. But was this the price? Was this what it took to find what he was looking for? For a moment, Tom was frozen. The weight of the decision felt unbearable. He looked at the glass of whiskey Ezra slid across the bar, and he felt that hunger again, that pull. It was there, deep inside him. It whispered to him, promised him something he couldn't name. He reached for the glass. Then a voice inside him screamed to stop. He couldn't do this. He couldn't give in. He couldn't be one of them. But when he looked up, Ezra was watching him with that same knowing smile. You'll come back, Ezra said softly. They always do. Tom's hand hovered over the glass, torn between the choice that could define him forever. But the real question wasn't if he would drink again. It was whether he could resist the pull of the saloon's power. The next few days passed in a blur. Tom couldn't remember when he had last slept, eaten, or even stepped outside. The saloon became his world, pulling him deeper into its grip with every passing hour. He couldn't stop thinking about the whiskey, about what Ezra had said. The more Tom tried to push the thoughts away, the louder the pull became. It was like a hunger, a gnawing ache in the pit of his stomach that could only be satisfied by drinking again. But Tom didn't want to admit it. He refused to admit it. He came to the saloon to prove he was in control, to see if the rumors were true, but now he was beginning to realize that control was a lie. He wasn't in charge of anything, not his actions, not his desires, not even his own fate. Tom knew he had to leave. But every time he even considered walking out the door, a wave of doubt and fear washed over him. What if I don't get another chance, he thought. What if this is the only place where I can find the answers I'm looking for? But what answers? What had he really come here to find? Was he so desperate to fill the emptiness inside him that he was willing to risk everything, his sanity, his soul, just for a taste of something he couldn't even understand? He couldn't stay in the saloon forever, could he? He could feel himself slipping, becoming one of them. The other Stowe's lifeless patrons had once been like him, but now they were shells of people who had traded their souls for something darker. They had come for answers too. They had made the choice to drink, and now they would never be able to leave. Ezra had made that clear. The saloon keeper seemed to be everywhere now, his presence lurking just out of sight, waiting for Tom to break. His eyes followed Tom, always observing, always waiting for him to crack. Every moment spent in the saloon felt like another step toward losing himself, toward becoming just another lost soul trapped in the endless cycle. Tom had heard the whispers, the ones the other patrons didn't seem to notice. There were stories of people who tried to leave, only to return, drawn back in by the same irresistible pull. The saloon didn't need to trap anyone physically. It didn't lock the doors or lock people inside. It just made sure that the desire to come back was stronger than anything else. Once you tasted the whiskey, it was like a chain had been wrapped around your soul, and no matter how hard you fought, it would always bring you back. One afternoon, as Tom sat at the bar staring into his empty glass, trying to ignore the gnawing emptiness inside, Ezra approached. He didn't say anything at first. He just slid into the seat beside Tom, his eyes cold and calculating, as always. Tom didn't look at him. He couldn't. He felt like Ezra could see right through him, like the saloon keeper knew exactly what Tom was thinking, what he was feeling. "I see you've been avoiding the whiskey," Ezra finally said, his voice smooth, like velvet sliding over ice. Tom stiffened. He hadn't realized it, but Ezra was right. He hadn't touched a drop since that first glass, when Head felt the pull for the first time. Head tried to ignore it, tried to pretend like it wasn't there, but it was like a ghost, always hanging over him. "I'm not avoiding it," Tom replied, his voice hoarse. "I just don't need it. Not yet." Ezra raised an eyebrow. "Not yet. That's what they all say. But eventually, you'll want it. You'll crave it. You'll need it." Tom clenched his fists. "I'm not like them. I'm not some lost soul who needs to drink just to survive. I can leave whenever I want." Ezra chuckled softly, his eyes narrowing. "You think you can leave, but..." "That's the trick, Tom. The drink doesn't just control you. It reveals what's already inside you. You're already part of it, whether you drink again or not." Tom felt a chill run down his spine. He knew Ezra was right. He could feel it, deep down, in his bones. The saloon had already marked him. The drink had already shown him who he was, or more accurately, who he had been hiding from. The emptiness inside him wasn't just a void. It was a part of him, something he had buried, something he had tried to ignore for years. He reached for his glass, the desire overwhelming. His hand hovered over it for a moment, trembling. He could hear Ezra's voice, a faint whisper in the back of his mind, urging him on. He could feel the temptation, the hunger, pulling him closer. "You don't have to drink, Tom," Ezra said, his voice low. "But you know you want to. You know it's calling to you." Tom closed his eyes, fighting the urge. He didn't want to give in. He couldn't give in. He had to stay strong. He had to break free from this place. But as he sat there, the pull grew stronger. He felt himself slipping again, back into that familiar haze, the one that promised answers and release, the one that promised freedom. The glass seemed to glow, beckoning him, calling him to take just one more sip. What could it hurt? He had already come this far. What was one more taste? Just one more sip and maybe this whole thing would finally make sense. But as his hand reached out, something stopped him. A voice, deep inside, screamed at him to stop. He pulled his hand back abruptly, standing up and pushing the glass away. He wasn't going to fall for it. He couldn't. Not again. He turned to face Ezra, his jaw clenched, his eyes burning with defiance. "I won't drink again," Tom said, his voice steady, though his heart was racing. "And I won't stay here. I'm leaving. I don't care what it takes." For the first time, Ezra's expression faltered. His eyes narrowed, and a flicker of something dark, something dangerous flashed across his face. "Leaving?" Ezra repeated, almost laughing. "You think you can just leave, Tom? You think you can walk away from this place, from the pull of the whiskey? You've already made your choice. You've already tasted it." Tom's breath caught in his throat. "I haven't made any choice," he spat. "I'm leaving." Ezra's smile faded completely. "There's no leaving, Tom. The saloon doesn't let anyone go, not once it's claimed you, and you, my friend, are already claimed." The words hit Tom like a thunderclap. He felt the floor beneath him tremble, like the entire saloon was shifting, folding in on itself. He wasn't sure if it was the alcohol or something else entirely, but for a moment, the room seemed to close in on him. He couldn't breathe. The walls felt like they were pressing in, the air suffocating him, and then, just as quickly, it was gone. The saloon was still, silent, almost peaceful. But Tom knew, deep down, that something had shifted. Tom backed away slowly, his legs shaking. He couldn't look at Ezra anymore. He couldn't look at anyone in the saloon. He had to leave. He had to escape before it was too late. But as he turned to walk away, something caught his eye. It was the door, wide open. For a moment he thought he might have imagined it, but no, it was real. The door was wide open, just as Ezra had said. He had a choice. Tom took a deep breath and walked toward the door. But as his hand gripped the handle, a voice echoed through the room, low and dangerous. "You can't leave, Tom. Not anymore." Tom's heart raced. The door was open, and yet the saloon seemed to have shifted around him. Was it truly an escape here? Was this just another part of the trap he couldn't escape? Tom's hand trembled as it gripped the saloon door's handle. The cool metal was a stark contrast to the heat rising in his chest. His heart hammered against his ribs, the pulsing rhythm quickening as his fingers tightened around the knob. He had made it. The door was wide open. The world outside, with its fresh air and freedom, was just beyond the threshold. His escape was within reach, but as his fingers moved to turn the handle, a sharp voice sliced through the stillness, its coldness freezing him in place. "You think you can leave, Tom?" The voice was calm, eerily calm, and Tom knew immediately who it belonged to. Ezra. The saloon keeper's presence was as suffocating as the thick, smoky air in the saloon. His voice was heavy with a dark amusement, as if the very idea of Tom escaping was laughable. Tom's heart skipped a beat. He tried to twist the handle again, harder this time, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through him. His eyes darted around the room, and for the first time, he saw the patrons staring at him, no longer just blank faces, but eyes full of something darker, recognition, understanding. They weren't just trapped by the saloon. They had made their choice, and now, so had he. He turned to face Ezra, the saloon keeper standing just a few feet away, his eyes unreadable. There was something about Ezra that had always unsettled him, something that felt beyond human, something that made him question if the saloon was more than just a place where people drank. "You really think you can leave?" Ezra repeated, his voice soft but carrying a weight that made Tom feel small. "Do you honestly believe you have a choice?" The question hit Tom like a brick to the chest. He had been running, fleeing from the truth, fleeing from the saloon's grip on him, but what if he had never really been free to begin with? Tom's thoughts spun, his chest tightening. He could feel it now, the weight of the saloon-esque pull, like a chain wrapped around his very soul. Every time he thought he was breaking free, the invisible link would tug him back, and the worst part, he had been the one to put there. "You think it's that simple?" Ezra continued, his voice almost coaxing now, like he was speaking to a child who couldn't understand. "You think you can just leave and go back to the life you had before? That this was all some mistake? You're wrong." Tom opened his mouth to protest, to scream at Ezra that he was in control, that he could still walk out of here, but the words caught in his throat. He couldn't deny the truth anymore. The saloon, the drink, it wasn't a trap. It was a choice that had been made the moment he took that first sip. "Don't you see?" Ezra's voice was almost gentle now. "The saloon doesn't force you to drink. It doesn't hold you here. You're not trapped by anything but your own desire. You came here. You wanted it. You chose this." Tom's knees weakened as the realization slammed into him like a freight train. He wasn't a victim. He wasn't helpless. He had walked into the saloon freely, ordered the drink freely, and made the decision to stay. It wasn't just the whiskey. It was the emptiness inside him that had led him here. "You're not stuck here because of the saloon, Tom," Ezra said, as though reading his thoughts. "You are stuck here because of your own choices. Every person who walks through that door makes a choice, whether they realize it or not. They come here looking for something they think they need. And then they drink, and they drink again, and again, until it consumes them." The words hit Tom harder than anything he had heard so far. He wasn't trapped by some dark power. He had walked in, looking for something he couldn't name. But now he understood. He had given in to the desire, the same one that had gripped the other patrons. And now, he was no different. Ezra's gaze softened slightly, but his words were no less heavy. "The saloon shows you the darkest parts of yourself, Tom. the parts you don't want to face, the parts you bury. And once you've seen them, once you've tasted what you're truly capable of, there's no going back. The room seemed to spin around Tom. His head throbbed, and he reached out to steady himself against the bar, his fingers brushing against the polished wood. His thoughts raced as he tried to comprehend what Ezra was saying. He wasn't stuck in the saloon because of some dark magic. He was stuck because of his own decisions. The patrons sitting around him were like mirrors reflecting his own hidden desires, his own fears. They had all made the same choice he had, each one drawn to the saloon for some twisted reason they couldn't name. And now they were part of it, just as he was. A cold, sinking feeling settled in his stomach. So, there's no way out? Ezra's expression hardened, and for a moment, Tom saw something else in his eyes, a flicker of something older, something far more ancient. There's always a way out, Tom, but it's not the way you think. You can walk out that door, but you'll never be the same. The saloon doesn't just take your soul, it takes your will. Tom stepped back, a rush of cold fear flooding his veins. You mean you'll always come back? Ezra finished, his voice dark and certain. Once you've tasted the drink, once you've crossed the line, it doesn't matter how far you run. It doesn't matter where you go. The saloon is always there, waiting for you to return. It's not the saloon that traps you, it's you. You chose this, Tom, and now it's a part of you. The word struck like a curse, and Tom's breath caught in his chest. Was this really it? Was there no escape from this place? From the pull of the whiskey, from the hunger inside him? No, Tom whispered, more to himself than to Ezra. I can leave. I will leave. He tried to turn away, but Ezra's hand shot out and grabbed his arm, his grip cold and unyielding. You think you can leave, Ezra said softly, but the saloon will always call you back. It always does. And when it does, you'll come. You'll be back before you even realize it, because you've already made the choice. Tom's heart pounded in his chest, and he yanked his arm away from Ezra's grasp. He wouldn't let himself be another lost soul, another prisoner to this place. His eyes landed on the open door again, and for the first time, it felt like an invitation. Not an escape, but an opportunity to make the only choice that really mattered. Tom walked toward the door, his footsteps steady, his resolve hardening. He didn't know if it was the right choice, but he knew one thing: he had to take control. He had to prove that he wasn't just another willing victim in this never-ending cycle. As he reached the door and gripped the handle, the saloon seemed to fall silent. The air was still, heavy with the weight of expectation. Ezra didn't speak. The patrons didn't move. It was as though time itself had frozen. Tom paused for a moment, staring at the door, then back at the saloon keeper. Him leaving, Ezra, him not coming back. But as Tom stepped out into the cold night air, he realized the true test was just beginning. The door had opened, but was the saloon really behind him? Or was it always with him, waiting in the shadows? The cool Montana night air felt like a sharp slap to Tom's face. He stepped outside the saloon, the heavy door swinging shut behind him with a finality that echoed in his bones. He hadn't made it Farronly a few paces before the weight of what had just done hit him. His legs were shaky, his thoughts scattered, but something in him felt lighter, as though a chain had been broken. He was free, or so he told himself. Tom glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see the saloon keeper standing in the doorway watching him with that cold, calculating gaze. But there was nothing. No Ezra, no eerie, lifeless patrons, only the wide, empty streets of the town bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, but the air didn't feel as fresh as he thought it would. There was something still heavy in his chest, a gnawing sensation that wouldn't go away. It wasn't just the fear, it was the emptiness. That same hunger that had first brought him to the saloon now followed him, lurking just below the surface. He shook his head, trying to shake the feeling off. It was just the pull of the drink, the saloon's curse trying to reel him back in. But he was stronger than that. He could fight it. He could stay free. He had to stay free. Tom took a step forward, his eyes scanning the empty street. There was nothing but silence. No people, no sound of footsteps. It was as though the whole world had gone still. For a moment it almost felt unreal, like the saloon had erased the town from existence, leaving him alone in a world that no longer made sense. He turned back to the saloon, his gaze locking onto the darkened window. His body tensed, every muscle screaming to turn and run, but he forced himself to look away. He had made his choice. He could still walk away. He would walk away. But the moment he turned his back again, something stopped him. It wasn't the saloon that called to him. No, this time it was something far worse. A voice, soft and whispering, tugged at the edges of his mind. It wasn't Ezra. It wasn't the patrons. It was his own voice. Tom froze. His pulse quickened. His body grew cold, but not from the night air. From the realization that the pull was stronger now, sharper. The emptiness inside him was growing, and there was no escaping it. "I can't go back," he whispered, his voice ragged, broken. But the words didn't sound like his own. He fought against the desire to turn around, to go back to the saloon, to take the drink once more. But the whispers grew louder. They were inside his head now, feeding the emptiness. "Just one more sip," it whispered. "You know it will make everything right. You can't keep running from this." The weight of it was crushing, suffocating. His legs buckled beneath him, and he sank to his knees in the dirt. It wasn't just the whiskey. It wasn't just the saloon. It was him. Tom had thought the saloon had been the trap, but it was his own weakness that had drawn him there in the first place. It was his own hunger, his own desire for something more, something to fill the void in his life that he had been running from for years. The saloon hadn't trapped him. He had trapped himself. He could feel it now, the sting of his own choices, the weight of the decisions he had made. And worse, he could feel it pulling him back, dragging him back to the one place he didn't want to be. The saloon. The door slammed open behind him, and Tom didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Ezra. He could feel him, like a shadow hanging over his shoulder. "You can't run from yourself, Tom," Ezra's voice called out, low and calm. "You've already made your choice. You've already drunk from the cup. And now, the choice isn't about walking away. It's about what you do next." Tom's body shook. His mind screamed at him to fight, to stand up and walk away, but his legs refused to move. He could feel it dragging him back into the darkness. But this time, it wasn't just the saloon calling him. It was his own need. Ezra's voice grew louder. "You came here seeking something, Tom. Answers. A way out. But the truth is, you're not running from the saloon. You're running from yourself. You have been your whole life." The words hit him like a blow. They were true, weren't they? He had come to the saloon because something inside him needed to fill the emptiness, and now he was here, on his knees, broken by the very thing he had tried to escape. But what if he could break this cycle? What if he could make a different choice? Tom lifted his head slowly, his eyes focusing on the darkness beyond the saloon, the world outside. He wasn't ready to give in. Tom's voice cracked as he whispered, "I won't go back." The darkness whispered in reply, "You'll come back, Tom, you always do. The saloon never lets go." For a moment, everything went silent. The pull, the whispers, the hunger, it all stopped. Tom felt an overwhelming clarity, a sudden strength that pushed him up to his feet. "No," he whispered again, but this time, it was a declaration. "I choose to be free." And for the first time since he stepped into the saloon, Tom felt the weight of the choice lifting, the emptiness fading just a little. The pull was still there, but it wasn't as strong. He wasn't running anymore. He had made his decision, and this time, it wasn't the saloon that controlled him. It was his own will. As Tom turned and took a step toward the world outside, he heard Ezra's voice one last time. "The door will always be open, Tom, and the choice will always be yours." Tom didn't turn back, but even as he walked away, Tom knew this was only the beginning. The saloon had shown him his darkness. But would he ever truly escape it? Or was he still just another lost soul waiting for the next drink? Tom walked away from the saloon, his steps hesitant at first but growing firmer with every breath of the cold night air. The weight in his chest had lightened, but the battle wasn't over. He could still feel the pull of the saloon, of the whiskey whispering to him. It was there, lingering beneath the surface like a dark echo that refused to fade. For a moment, Tom thought he might actually be free. He had chosen to leave. He had made the decision to walk away, to stop running from his own demons. But there was a gnawing sensation in his Gutta thirst that hadn't been quenched. His feet carried him further down the empty street, the world around him silent and still. Every street lamp he passed seemed to cast a long shadow, making the night feel darker, colder. It wasn't just the physical cold anymore. The emptiness inside him, the part that had driven him to the saloon in the first place, was still there, deep in his bones. He had done it. He had walked out. But why did it still feel like the saloon was with him? As he turned a corner, he caught sight of the saloon in the distance. The door was open, the flickering light spilling out onto the street like a beckoning invitation. Tom's breath caught in his throat. He stopped dead in his tracks, the weight of temptation settling heavily in his chest. It wasn't just the saloon that called to him. It was the whiskey, the need, the empty space inside him had returned, and this time it was louder, more insistent. He needed to fill it, just one more drink, one more sip, just enough to quiet the ache, to make the darkness go away. He could walk back inside. He could walk right through that door and take what he needed. But as he stood there, his body frozen between the street and the saloon, a voice broke through the fog in his mind. It was the voice he hadn't expected, the voice that had been there all along. His voice. "You're not like them," he whispered to himself. "You're not." He shook his head violently, trying to clear the thoughts, the whispers. He was stronger than this. He had made the decision to leave. He had already chosen. The saloon didn't control him. His desires didn't control him. He was free. But the pull grew stronger. The door seemed open wider in front of him, the whiskey glowing faintly in the dim light. "It's just a drink," the voice whispered. "One drink won't hurt. You can walk out whenever you want." Just one more taste. Tom stumbled forward, his legs betraying him as the hunger within him surged. His hands shook as he reached for the door. But then, as if the saloon itself had seen his hesitation, a sudden gust of wind swept through the street, slamming the door shut with a resounding thud. Tom froze. The sound of the door closing was like a slap to his face. The saloon was sealed off from him now, just as it had been before. It was as if the saloon was reminding him of something, that the choice wasn't about the drink. It was about him, his will, his strength. He stood there in stunned silence, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His chest tightened as the weight of what had just happened settled on him. He had come so close to giving in, and yet something had stopped him. He took a step back, his mind still reeling, his body trembling. He had to leave, for good. No more wandering, no more turning back. But before he could move, the sound of footsteps echoed behind him. Tom whirled around, heart pounding. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the world was holding its breath. Standing there in the street was Ezra, his silhouette framed by the faint light from the saloon. His cold, calculating gaze locked onto Tom's, as though he had known all along what was about to happen. "You think you can leave?" Ezra's voice was low, almost gentle, but there was something sinister beneath it. "You think you can walk away from this place, from what's inside you?" Tom's heart skipped a beat. He took a step back, but Ezra's voice followed him like a shadow. "You can't escape, Tom. You can't outrun what's inside you. It's a part of you now. The whiskey is a part of you." Tom swallowed hard, feeling the weight of Ezra's words hit him like a wave. It wasn't the saloon that had kept him coming back, it was the emptiness inside him, the thing that had driven him here in the first place. He had thought he could leave it behind, but it was always with him. He could never escape it. "You can't leave," Ezra repeated, his tone almost pitying now. "You've already made your choice. You've tasted it. And once you taste it, once it gets inside you, it never really lets go." Tom clenched his fists, feeling the pull in his chest again, the emptiness, the need. But as he stared at Ezra, something clicked. He wasn't a victim. He wasn't weak. This was his choice, his battle. And no matter what Ezra said, he was the one who controlled it. Tom lifted his head, staring Ezra down. "I don't need it anymore," he said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "I'm done. I'm not going back." For a moment, there was silence. Ezra's expression remained unreadable, but something flickered in his eye, something almost like disappointment. But then, without a word, Ezra turned and walked back toward the saloon, vanishing into the shadows. Tom stood there for a long moment, the weight in his chest still there, but lighter now. The saloon was no longer calling to him. The pull had loosened. He had made his choice, and for the first time since Head stepped inside the saloon, he truly felt free. The road ahead was still long. The hunger would never fully disappear, but now he understood something. It was always going to be his choice. And as long as he held on to that, he could keep walking away. But even as Tom walked into the night, the question lingered. Had he truly escaped? Or was he just walking away from one darkness into another, one that would follow him for the rest of his life? Tom's. Footsteps echoed through the empty streets as he walked away from the saloon, each step growing heavier. The cool night air, once a comforting relief, now felt cold and suffocating. It wasn't the physical cold that weighed on him, but the emptiness inside the hollow ache he couldn't escape. He had made his choice. He had left the saloon behind, but the feeling was still there, lingering beneath the surface, gnawing at him. He wasn't free, was he? The whispers of the saloon, of Ezra's voice, echoed in his mind, growing louder with every step. "You've made your choice, Tom. You've already drunk from the cup. You can't go back. The choice isn't yours anymore." He wanted to scream, to run, to silence those thoughts. But no matter how fast he walked, no matter how far he pushed himself, it didn't feel like he was moving forward. He felt as if he were stuck in place, caught in a loop, walking the same dark road over and over again. The weight of the choice he had made pressed down on him. Had he really made a choice, or had he just been following a path already laid before him? The saloon wasn't just a place, it was a reflection of everything he had hidden from himself, everything he had ignored. The whiskey hadn't given him answers, it had shown him the truth that he had been running from his own desires, his own fears, for as long as he could remember. But now, he had to confront them. Tom stopped in the middle of the street, breathing heavily as if the air itself had become too thick to breathe. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. He wasn't just running from the saloon. He had been running from the truth, from himself. He hadn't left the saloon. Not really. The saloon had never been a building or a place. It had always been inside him, just waiting for him to face it. And now, standing in the cold, empty street, he realized something terrifying. The saloon was still with him. His body trembled as he looked around, half expecting to see the saloon looming over him like a dark shadow. He closed his eyes, trying to push the image out of his mind. But it was useless. The saloon was everywhere. It was inside him, feeding on his fears, his desires. The choice wasn't just about the whiskey. It was about everything. The emptiness, the hunger. Tom's chest tightened. He couldn't breathe. Suddenly, he heard a voice, low and familiar. It wasn't Ezra's voice, but it was the voice of the saloon, the voice of temptation. "You can still come back," it whispered. "It's never too late." Tom's heart pounded as the words wrapped around him like a chain. It's never too late. He turned around, his eyes darting to the alleyway just behind him. For a moment, it felt like the road ahead was closed off. The saloon's call had found him again, wrapping him in its grip. Every step forward, every step away from it, felt like a lie. It wasn't about walking away anymore. It was about confronting what lay within him. "I'm not going back," Tom said, his voice barely a whisper, but his words felt like a vow. The voice, however, didn't back down. It grew louder. "You made the choice. Now you have to face it. Face what you really want." The hunger inside him twisted. His body screamed for the drink, for the release it had given him. He could feel the pull, the temptation gnawing at his mind, reminding him of that first taste, that first sip that had made him feel alive, made him feel like he was part of something. But this wasn't the way. He knew it. He could feel it. Tom clenched his fists, forcing the thoughts out of his mind. He couldn't let them win. He had faced the saloon once. He could do it again. He took a deep breath and forced his legs to move, step by step, away from the voices, away from the darkness. It wasn't easy. It wasn't supposed to be. But with every step, the weight lifted just a little. The pull grew weaker, the hunger slowly fading. And then, as he reached the end of the street, he stopped. The saloon wasn't behind him anymore. It wasn't in his mind. It wasn't inside him. The truth he had been avoiding, his own choice, was no longer a burden. It was a weapon. He could use it. He could control it. Tom's chest rose and fell with each breath. For the first time, he felt lighter. The truth was no longer something that haunted him. It was something he could carry with him. And that truth was this: the saloon didn't control him. The drink didn't control him. He controlled his choices. He wasn't just walking away from the saloon. He was walking toward the life he had been too afraid to face. And as he moved further into the night, he felt it. The saloon, the drink, the hunger, it was still there, waiting for him. But it no longer had power over him. He had made his choice. But the journey wasn't over. Tom had faced the darkness within, but was he truly free? Or had he only taken the first step toward the greatest challenge of all, facing his own desires for the rest of his life? Tom's steps were slow, methodical as he walked deeper into the empty street, away from the saloon. The cool night air seemed to breathe in rhythm with his own pulse, calming his nerves, but the weight of the choice he had made still hung heavily on his chest. The further he moved from the saloon, the clearer it became. He was no longer running from the place. He was running from himself, from the version of himself that had brought him to the brink of losing everything. But the path ahead wasn't clear. Every time he took a step, it felt like the ground under him trembled, as if the saloon's influence was still fighting to pull him back. His mind kept going back to that feeling, the temptation of the whiskey, the pull of the saloon's walls, the whispers of what he had left behind. Would it follow me forever, he wondered. The nagging feeling, the pull of that hunger, gnawed at him like a constant ache. He had walked away from the saloon, but had he really left it behind? Or was he just fooling himself? Tom stopped in his tracks, his chest tight, as though the very air around him was closing in. He couldn't escape the truth. The saloon wasn't just a place. It wasn't just a memory. It was part of him now. It had always been part of him. And worse, he had to face the fact that he was never really in control. That's what the saloon had taught him. It wasn't the drink that controlled him. It was the decisions he had made, the way he had craved something more, the emptiness inside him that led him straight to the saloon. It was never just about the whiskey. It had been about what it represented. It was about what he thought he needed to fill the void in his life. But the truth was that nothing could fill that void except his own choices. But as Tom stood there, staring into the empty street, he realized the bigger truth. There is no escaping who you are. No matter how far you run, no matter how far you walk, you will always carry yourself with you. And that was the true test, facing yourself and understanding the choices you've made, not running away from them. He knew he couldn't walk away from the hunger forever. The saloon's grip wasn't gone. It would always be inside him, and if he wasn't careful, it would find a way to pull him back. The truth was, the saloon wasn't a trap. It was a reflection of the choices he made, and those choices didn't disappear just because he walked out the door. But he could choose. He could decide whether or not he would let the saloon control him. Tom turned around, feeling the weight of that realization wash over him. The saloon was still there, in his mind, its doors wide open, its dark presence looming. But now, for the first time, it felt like he could control it. The sound of footsteps behind him broke through his thoughts. He turned quickly, his heart racing, but it was only a shadow. No one was there. Maybe it's me, he thought. Maybe I'm the one still chasing shadows. But then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw something. A figure standing at the edge of the street, tall, familiar, Ezra. Tom's stomach dropped. How had he gotten there? Was the saloon keeper following him? Had he never really escaped? But then Ezra spoke, his voice calm as always. You can't run from what's inside you, Tom. The saloon knows that. You know that. Tom gritted his teeth, taking a step back. I don't need to hear this, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You can't control me anymore. Ezra's expression remained unreadable. He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. I'm not here to control you, Tom. I'm here to show you the truth about what you are running from. Tom swallowed hard, trying to steady himself. He felt the weight of Ezra's gaze. But for the first time, he didn't feel the pull. The hunger inside him, the emptiness, it was still there, but it no longer had power over him. I've made my choice, Tom said, his voice stronger now, more certain. I'm not going back. I'm not letting this control me. Ezra's eyes flickered with something: amusement, disappointment. It was hard to tell. He glanced briefly at the saloon inn, the distance, then back at Tom. You think it's over? You think you can walk away and forget what you've learned? The saloon doesn't let go. You don't let go. For a moment, Tom hesitated. He could feel the hunger, the need, clawing at his insides again, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't as strong. He had made a choice. I've learned everything I need to, Tom said firmly, and am not going back. Not to the saloon, not to the lies, not to the things I thought I wanted. Ezra's lips curled into a half smile, but there was no warmth in it. The saloon isn't a place, Tom. It's not a thing. It's what you choose to believe in, and as long as you carry that belief with you, you'll never be free. Tom stood tall, his gaze locked with Ezra's. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The streets were empty. The saloon was quiet in the distance, its shadow long across the ground. And then, something shifted. Tom could feel it, a quiet but powerful change inside him. The hunger didn't fade, but it lessened. The saloon no longer had the same grip on him. He wasn't free of it entirely, but he was free of the need it once had over him. You can leave now, Ezra, Tom said, his voice calm but resolute. You've shown me everything I need to know, and now I'll make my own choices. Ezra's smile faded, and for the first time Tom saw a flicker of something in his eyes: recognition, maybe, or resignation. Without a word, Ezra turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. Tom stood alone on the street, his breath steady, his mind clearer than it had been in days. He hadn't escaped the saloon, but he had learned to live with it. He had learned that the power of choice, his own choices, was what would shape his future. For the first time, he felt like he was truly free. But as Tom took his first steps forward, he knew that his battle wasn't over. The saloon's grip might have loosened, but the journey toward true freedom had just begun. Tom's heart raced as he stepped away from the saloon, the weight of the past few days finally starting to sink in. His footsteps felt heavy on the dirt road, as though the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to make one final choice. He had walked out. He had faced the darkness. He had made the decision to stop running, to stop hiding behind the lies of the saloon. But the saloon was still there. Its influence still lingered, lurking just beneath the surface. He could feel it, the pull, the hunger, like a shadow clinging to his every step. He hadn't truly escaped. Tom's hands shook as he walked further, the emptiness gnawing at him with every passing second. The choice to leave the saloon had been his, But that didn't mean it was easy. That didn't mean the hunger inside him would just vanish. It wouldn't go away. The emptiness was a part of him now, a constant reminder of the choices he had made, of the darkness he had tried to bury. But as Tom kept walking, something shifted. The pull of the saloon that was still present grew weaker, the hunger in. His chest was still there, but it was fading. He had faced the truth. He had chosen to walk away, and now, for the first time, he was beginning to understand something crucial. He wasn't just running from the saloon. He was running from himself. The emptiness, the hunger, it wasn't the saloon's fault. It wasn't the whiskey's fault. It had always been his choice, his battle. And now, with each step, he felt the grip of his own desires loosening. Tom stopped. He stood still for a moment, the world around him silent. The saloon was far behind him, but it still called to him, distant and haunting. The hunger was still there, but the difference now was that Tom knew it wasn't the saloon that had created it. It was him. It was his desire for something more, his unwillingness to face his own darkness that had led him there in the first place. He closed his eyes for a moment, taking in the stillness of the night. The quiet of the world around him seemed to breathe with him, each inhale a reminder that he was still here. He was still standing. He had made it out. But even more important, he had made the choice. Tom took a deep breath, his chest expanding as he opened his eyes. The path ahead was still uncertain, but he knew now that he could face it. He had faced the saloon, faced himself, and walked away. The saloon didn't control him anymore. He controlled his choices. As he turned away from the distant saloon, the hunger was still there, but it didn't define him. It wasn't a trap anymore. It was just a part of the journey. Tom walked on, free in a way he hadn't felt before, each step taking him further from the past. The door was still open, always open. But now, he knew the truth. He had been given the gift of choice, and that was the only thing that truly mattered. Final payoff, Tom's steps were steady now, his mind clear. The saloon, once an all-consuming force in his life, was now a distant memory. The hunger that had driven him there in the first place still lingered, but it no longer controlled him. The truth was simple, yet profound. Freedom wasn't about escaping the saloon. It was about choosing not to return, not because of the walls that held him, but because of the strength to face his own darkness. As he walked away, the hunger wasn't gone, but it was no longer the center of his world. The saloon's grip had weakened, not because it had lost power, but because Tom had found the power to choose, and that choice, his ability to confront the emptiness and walk away, was the key to his true freedom. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Tom was ready to face it, free.